Okay, so AI in healthcare. It's everywhere you look these days. And it feels like we're at this point where science fiction is becoming, well, a little less fictional.
Right. And I think for a lot of people, one of the most, let's say, attention-grabbing ideas is this concept of an AI doctor.
Exactly. And that's what we're really diving into today, specifically what Amazon is doing in this space, because they're making some pretty big moves.
Yeah, and for you listening, it probably brings up a lot of questions like, is this something to be excited about or maybe a little bit worried about? Can we really trust AI with something as important as our health?
That's the core of it, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about potentially handing over some pretty big decisions to an algorithm.
And this isn't just an Amazon thing either. You've got Google doing their thing with MedPal M2, Microsoft is in the game, IBM. There are some pretty big players all investing heavily in this.
And the projections are pretty mind-blowing. Like, McKinsey is estimating this could be a $150 billion market by 2026.
Yeah, that's huge. And it tells you that, this isn't just a passing fad. AI has the potential to really change healthcare, from how we get diagnosed to how treatments are personalized, even just the whole administrative side of things.
So today, we want to really cut through all the noise and give you a clear picture of what's actually happening and really get to the bottom of that question. Can we trust AI with our health?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
So let's start with Amazon. How are they approaching this AI doctor idea? We're seeing things like Amazon Clinic popping up. What's going on there?
Right. So Amazon Clinic, they're offering these virtual consultations for a whole range of common health issues. And the key here is how they're integrating AI into the process.
Okay, so it's more than just like a basic symptom checker online.
Exactly. They're using things like machine learning and natural language processing. So you describe your symptoms, and the AI is designed to actually analyze that information.
So it's doing more than just matching keywords. It's trying to understand what you're saying.
Right. And then based on that analysis, it can potentially suggest diagnoses, treatment options, and even in some cases, help with getting prescriptions.
Wow, that's pretty advanced stuff.
It is. And you see similar things with Google's MedPal M2. It's been trained on a massive amount of medical data, so it can hold its own in conversations about medical topics.
That brings up a really big question, though, and I think it's on everyone's mind. How accurate are these AI systems when it comes to diagnosis? We hear about AI doing some amazing things, but with health, accuracy is everything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there is some really promising evidence out there. For example, we've seen studies where AI can actually match or even beat human doctors at diagnosing things like skin cancer from images or detecting diabetic retinopathy from eye scans.
So does that mean we're on the verge of having AI doctors that are consistently more accurate than humans?
Well, we have to be careful about jumping to conclusions. As amazing as those results are, it's important to remember that AI is still in its early stages. These systems can and do make mistakes. And in the context of health, a misdiagnosis could have really serious consequences.
That's a sobering thought.
It is, and it leads us to that core question again. Can we truly trust AI with our health? I mean, recommending a movie is one thing, but our well-being is a whole different level.
Absolutely. So what are some of the things we need to be thinking about when it comes to this idea of trust?
Well, one of the biggest things is the data that AI is trained on. If
Right.
that data has biases in it or if it's incomplete, then the AI's conclusions are going to reflect those problems.
Can you give us a real-world example of what that might look like?
Sure. There was a study in The Lancet that found that some AI models trained mostly on data from Western populations actually had a higher error rate when used with patients from other parts of the world.
So basically, the AI was less accurate when dealing with people from diverse backgrounds.
Right. And that's a big concern. It shows how AI could actually make existing health inequalities even worse. And it really highlights the need for having diverse and representative data sets when training these systems. It's about making sure the AI works for everyone, not just a select few.
That's a really important point, and it makes you wonder, would a human doctor be able to pick up on those nuances and consider the individual more?
Potentially, yes. I mean, human doctors bring a lot more to the table than just knowledge. They have intuition, empathy, and they can factor in a patient's entire life and medical history. AI, as powerful as it is, still doesn't have that human element.
And then there's the privacy issue. This is something I know a lot of people are worried about. We're talking about incredibly sensitive information here, our medical history. And when you have a company like Amazon involved, it's natural to be concerned about how that data might be used.
Absolutely. Amazon's history with data privacy, well, let's just say it's not spotless. And it raises the question, Could our medical data end up being used in ways we didn't consent to? Like targeted advertising for health products. It's a valid concern, even with regulations like IPED in place.
So there's this whole web of issues we need to untangle. Trust, data privacy. It feels like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on some of the bigger ethical questions, like what role should AI ultimately play in healthcare? Are we aiming for AI to replace human doctors entirely, or should it be more of a tool to assist them?
What do you think is the more likely scenario?
I think, and I hope, that the more responsible approach is to see AI as a tool to enhance what human doctors can do. Free them up from some of the more routine tasks, give them more data to work with. But complete replacement, that raises a lot of concerns.
I can see why. It's hard to imagine healthcare without that human connection.
Exactly. And then there's the question of access. You could argue that AI has the potential to make healthcare more affordable and accessible, especially in areas where there aren't enough doctors. But then again, it requires technology and internet access, which not everyone has.
Right. It could actually end up widening the gap between those who have access to quality healthcare and those who don't.
That's the dilemma. We have to be really mindful of how these technologies are implemented and who they end up benefiting.
Okay, so looking ahead, what's your take on the future of AI in healthcare? It seems like there's so much potential, but also a lot of hurdles to overcome.
I think it's going to be a wild ride. The possibilities are pretty incredible. Imagine AI helping us diagnose diseases earlier, personalize treatments more effectively, develop new drugs faster. But we can't just blindly embrace the technology. We need responsible development, thoughtful regulation, and a real focus on ethical considerations.
So when you talk about regulation, what kind of things do you think need to be put in place?
Well, we need clear guidelines from governments and regulatory bodies, things like standards for data privacy, transparency in how these algorithms work, and mechanisms for accountability when things go wrong.
Makes sense. And then there's the role of education, right?
Right.
Making sure patients understand what AI can and can't do.
Absolutely. We need to empower people to make informed decisions about their health and how they want to use these tools.
So coming back to where we started, this idea of an AI doctor, like what Amazon seems to be working on, is it something we should be embracing? Or are there too many red flags?
I think it's more nuanced than a simple yes or no. There's a lot of promise, but we need to proceed with caution.
So for you listening, what are the key things to keep in mind as all of this unfolds?
I'd say the most important thing is to remember that AI is a tool, not a magic solution. It can be incredibly powerful, but it needs to be used responsibly. We need transparency, data security, and human oversight to make sure the benefits outweigh the risks.
That's a great point. It's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Well, on that note, here's a final thought for you all to chew on. Given everything we've talked about today, all the potential, the challenges, the ethical questions, what aspect of AI in healthcare do you think needs the most scrutiny as this technology continues to evolve? It's something to really consider as we move into this new era of healthcare. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.